up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Tampa Bay Real Producers Podcast. This, of course, is the podcast that is made for real producers, by real producers, and with none other than Tampa Bay's real producers, such as Miss Katrina Madewell. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for always getting my name right.
Did I get it right?
Always.
I hope I did. I'm sure some people butcher it, don't they?
They say Madewell. I don't know why. There's an E in the middle of it, but they say Madewell.
Yeah, the
it's
E's
definitely
right there.
Madewell.
I mean, come on now. Pay attention, people.
Yeah.
Katrina and I have known each other now for, I guess it's been, 4 years? I think that's when I was on your radio show. It was about 4 years ago.
You guys were brand new to the market, right?
We were, yeah. Tampa Bay Real Producers started in 2019, so I think it was. Yeah, right around that market is when we were brought on. We always appreciated any sort of exposure we can get, to just talk about the brand, and you helped us with that. And so it's an honor to have you now and get to dive into your story a little bit more on this podcast. But Katrina has been featured before in Tampa Bay Real Producers as a top producing agent. We won't talk a ton about numbers here, but I just took a glance earlier. I think I saw, well into the 20 million range last year alone, over 70 transactions I think I saw on the MLS, which isn't always accurate, so I'm sure that's not completely nailed down. But Katrina's been a top producer for many years now with Keller Williams, and so we're going to dive into her story. So we'll start with a little bit about your background. Did you grow up in this area? If not, how'd you get here? And eventually, what got you interested in real estate?
Well, probably unlike a lot of your other people, I'm native to the area, so I was born and raised right here in Tampa.
Huh?
Yeah, one of the few. Tampa used to be a small city, and it's not a small town anymore. It's a big city.
It's not.
So it's been really fun to watch Tampa grow. I love it. And I got started in the business actually before I was even 18 years old. I worked in a mortgage office setting appointments for loan officers. We were cold calling back in the day.
There you go.
With the Hill Donnelly
great
phone
sales
book.
training. Yeah.
So I set appointments for loan officers, and when I graduated high school early, so I was 17 years old. When I got out of high school, I wanted to be a flight attendant. That's what I thought my career track was going to be. So I got my degree in travel and tourism. I did a fast track associates. It was about 8 months. And at the end of that, I had worked for this mortgage office setting appointments, and the branch manager there begged me. She's like, "No, go get your license, be a loan officer, stay with us." And I said, No, I'm going to go down this other track. I really want to be a flight attendant. Well, as you know, that's changed. I'm glad I didn't take that route. Anyway, I just decided, I went through this school. I got a job offer with Continental Airlines, making $5.62 an hour back in the day. And I had to agree to relocate anywhere in the world they wanted to send me. And I just said, I don't think this is for me.
The flight attendant thing was a pretty prestigious role, though, at a time there, I remember.
It was, yeah. And at the time that I was in college for it was.
Yeah.
So really, it wasn't. Now the airlines is another form of transportation, but back then only the elite or the affluent
it was like a
traveled.
luxury thing, yeah.
Correct. People are always in suits. You don't see the flip-flops, the bathing suits, and the pajamas that you see now at the airport.
Very different culture now, for sure. So what changed your mind?
Well, it was the job offer, right? Making a little over $5 an hour even back then. And I had to agree to relocate anywhere in the world they wanted to send me. Well, I was from Tampa and all my family is here, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
And so I just said, and this was before really the airline industry and travel changed, right? And the job offer was always still open to go back to the mortgage office where I started. And, Joyce was an amazing manager. At that time, there weren't a lot of female loan officers, let alone managers, the branch managers. There just wasn't. So she invited me back, and I said, I think I'm going to take you up on it. I, at 18 years old, I was fresh, 18, took the state exam. I failed it by 2 points.
Oh, wow.
So then I went back, retook it, I passed it. I got so much harassment for failing that state exam. But I was 18.
Healthy ribbing, huh?
I barely knew what a mortgage was.
Right.
I mean, and here I'm passing the state exam. I learned so much, from that experience in my time.
That's cool.
As a loan officer for the first 17 years of my career.
So you were in the business 17 years. I didn't realize that in the mortgage
before
side.
I even started on the real estate side.
Yeah. No, I didn't realize that. So eventually, what changed your your passion and direction to get into real estate?
So I talked about part of this in my book, right? Because I wrote a book, Selling Through Relationships. Not to plug it, but I talk about my story.
Plug away.
Yeah. I talk about my story in there and why I made that transition. And the bottom line at the end of the day, all the people that I was connected with in the mortgage side of the business, all the clients that I worked with, it was very relational. A lot of referred people, past clients. I mean, it was just the way we worked. And so after the housing market crashed, because I lived through that, I worked through it, I never did anything else. A lot of other people had to get a different job just to make it work. I stayed through it. But what I noticed was, banks were imploding by the day. So those of us that were around and in the business, we remember those days very well. You'd have to verify money was at title, the day of closing, because they were imploding. Title companies were imploding. Banks were imploding. It was like the Wild West. Everything was changing really quick. And, one of the...
like 05, 06 range?
Yeah. Well, I study the data, right, in the market and the analytics. So the peak of the market was 06, December of 06, and it started dropping in January of 07.
Okay.
And so I saw it coming. At that time, I had told, the broker, it's changing. And I was doing both at that time. I did both for 4 years. And so after the housing market crashed, so many of the banks were imploding. And, one of the last deals I did was for a family member. It was for my mother-in-law. And those of you in the mortgage business can totally relate to this, but she had all 3 credit scores in the 800, was on the same job for 23 years, paid off house. It was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Right? That deal was a no-brainer. In any other normal market, the banks would have been saying, how fast can you sign, Miss Madewell? Right? But the fact that it was a condo, right? And condos were taboo.
Considered risky, yeah.
At that time, they did not want to write condos. And I think we're going into that market again for different reasons. But she had bought an auction property. So the escrow deposits are non-refundable. And at that point, they changed the loan to value guideline. She was planning to put 20% down. They changed it overnight. Like, we're waiting for a clear to close. They changed it to 70% or 30% down. And so I had to literally fight tooth and nail with the underwriters, with the reps. I'm like, this deal's done. You should be able to get that deal done and sell it. This is crazy. You can't go back to someone the day before closing and say you got to put 10% more down. So in a nutshell, they end up taking the deal at 75% loan to value and selling it quickly. But it was just the fact that it had gotten to that point, right? Like, all the relationships.
Left a bad taste in your mouth, yeah.
Yeah, all the you couldn't get anything done by relationships anymore. And it's sort of still that way today. When it goes through automated underwriting, it either makes the cut or it doesn't. Yep. And so it didn't used to be that way. And so the fact that all that changed, it wasn't relational anymore. And I just didn't like the job, to be honest. My heart wasn't in it anymore.
So you saw the agent side as being able to allow you to flourish in a relationship-focused business.
Well, I was already doing it, right? I was already doing both for 4 years. And what I found was I just liked the real estate side of it much better than I ever did the mortgage side.
Okay. And do you credit that to just the people? Like, do you think it's more of the personal connection, which seems to be a pretty strong point for you, which is why you wrote the book, right? Selling through relationships. So do you think real estate allows you to flourish more in that way than the loans ever did?
I mean, it does. And I'm good at the numbers, right? I can do it, but there's certain features in people's personality that are like natural, right? It's that whole, you get up and you go to work and you whistle on your way to work and it doesn't feel like work, right? It's fun. You just do it because it doesn't feel like work. You like it. And it wasn't that way anymore.
Rob's saying that's his day-to-day right now, right? He's a video guy in his core.
Right. So, and it's interesting. Keller Williams has what they call a KPA, which is a personality assessment. And on there, they have different job matches. And, when I came over to Keller Williams probably 8 years ago, my team leader had me take a KPA, and like a lot of mega agents, I'm like, what are you doing? Why am I taking this? This is a waste of my time. So I kind of blew through it. But what I found really profound in that, and I asked my team lead at the time, I'm like, hey, did you notice anything about this KPA? You got the results, you looked at it. And I was wondering if he picked up what I picked up, and he did. And so it'll kind of give you like a score, high, medium, low, how you rate on stuff. And so for me, the number one thing was a MAPS coach. So like to coach other agents. And I had taken it for mega agent. That was like number 4. It was still a high match. But loan officer was a low match at 23%.
Wow.
And I thought, that's interesting. And I'm like, so the first thing I said is, I don't know if I can curse, but I was like, this is BS. You know, I was like, what is this? This is I'm a low match.
I've been there 17 years.
Yeah,
and
I
I've been
did
a low
this job
match.
for 2 decades. How am
Yeah.
I low match? And he said, you're missing it. He goes, it's a happiness factor.
Yeah.
He goes, why aren't you a loan officer anymore? And I said, I don't want to do it. I hate the job.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's just
That
it.
explains it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So in a nutshell, there's certain innate personality traits that people have that help them flourish in certain jobs.
Totally. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The name, they still do that grading today? The same
They still
test?
do it today.
Yeah.
Every Keller Williams agent that's a top producer will have a KPA. And it's interesting the things that you see on that. And not everyone is a high match for the role that they're in. It doesn't mean that you can't do the job. Sure. Clearly I did it, right?
The fulfillment factor, though, which I think is awesome. Because
it's a fulfillment factor.
The
and
goal is to
it's
tap
how much,
into what fulfills you most.
How much work. Like, so a great analogy is a CPA, right? Mm-hmm. There's probably a lot of people that could do that. They could crunch numbers, they could bean count, but it would be so exhausting for some people over others. Some people it gives them energy, others it sucks the life out of them.
Totally.
And
Makes a lot of
it's the
sense.
same concept.
So at what point, Katrina, you were in real estate already now, it sounds like, for a few years, and then I think if I remember your story, somebody might have approached you about this radio idea, right? And going through Tampa Home Talk was what your brand has become and what you've built. But I think you also have used that as a great lead source and other benefits, which we'll dive into. So how deep into your real estate business did that idea come to fruition, and what was driven by you to be able to go in that route and make that a reality?
So I started real estate in 2003 and I started radio in 2013.
Okay.
So here
so
we're
you were in the business 10
2023.
years. Yeah.
So it's been 10 years on the radio journey. And at the time that was started, there was a company out of San Diego. They're no longer around, but Real Estate Radio Network was approaching different people in different markets. So just like you guys, they did their homework to see who the producers were in different markets. And so when they decided to come to Tampa and launch Tampa, they were looking it up to see who the producers were. They invited a handful of people, actually right here in your building at the Center Club. We all had lunch. I think it was here. Maybe it was Tampa Club. Anyway, we from there, they kind of narrowed it down. It was 3 people could do it. So out of 10, some people didn't want to do it. Some people wanted to do it, couldn't afford to do it. Because you have to keep in mind, the market was still not good at that point. There was still a lot of negative PR in the media, which was their goal, was to bring some positive stuff to the airwaves. And so initially when, Ron Quintero had invited me, I said, well, this sounds really great, but I'm not going to do this. Like, I get approached by stuff all the time. As agents, we get approached all the time. And so we really have to pick and choose what shiny object we want to gravitate towards, spend money on. And it's not free and it's not cheap. You have to write a really big check to start radio.
Yeah.
And so that comes out of your pocket until you have enough sponsors to do that.
Right.
And so I'm blessed. A lot of the sponsors we've had since day one.
That's awesome.
And it's been an interesting journey. It's been a long journey. I've learned a lot, but I had originally told Ron Quintero no, that I didn't want to do it. And he said,
he kept hounding you, huh?
Why? He didn't hound me. It was more of a conversation. He said, why? I don't understand why you wouldn't want to do this. And I said, well, I don't want any new shiny objects. Like, it's hard enough to focus on real estate right now.
And you were already a producer. That's just why they approached you, right?
Yeah.
So prior to radio, like, what was going back a little bit, when you think about those first 10 years, what were some of the strategies that really worked effectively for you? Were you tapping into just warm network initially because you were from the area? And then did you also have other lead sources that you were investing in and that were helping you grow? What were those first 10 years like?
So I didn't look at my business then like I do today, right? I had a business for a long time. I've been self-employed since I was 23 years old. I started my own company at 23, right? As a correspondent lender with audited financials. So, I mean, I've been self-employed for a long time, but the initial years were very different than where they are now. And so I never really thought about it like, hey, I have to have these different lead sources. Even when I went from the mortgage business into the real estate side, I had an immediate pipeline because I had a list of people that already knew me, liked me, and trusted me. And so the loan officers that I had used, or the agents rather, that I had used at that time, they had already left Tampa. They had retired. Some of them had gotten older. And so there really just weren't a lot of good agents, in my opinion, left. As a matter of fact, the biggest reason why I got my real estate license was because my experience was so bad buying my home that I did in '03 that I said, gosh, there's got to be a better way to do this. And I literally did the transaction myself.
Yeah.
So there was an agent that got paid, but I knew how to write the offer better than she did. So,
I laugh because you have no idea how many times I've heard that. Like, we interview a lot of top producing agents on the show, and it seems so common that many of them say the exact same thing that you just said, that they had a really bad experience the first time working with some agent, and that drove them to be like, there's got to be a better way, you know? Yeah. So it's funny how often that is.
How I started. It was an easy, natural transition for me because I had a pipeline of people and had a history of people. I mean, I have clients, Don, that I helped I had 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've gone through the process with them again. They originally maybe did a mortgage, and now I've sold properties for them, and now I've sold properties for their kids. It's been a very interesting journey. You start to feel old when they have like little kids when you first met them, and now like their kids are in their 20s buying their first home. You're like, man.
But it's awesome to know that you have that like that's why the book makes sense, right? Selling through relationships, because it seems like you've done just that.
Don, you have kids. People do not send their kids to anybody they don't know, love, and trust.
For sure.
They don't.
Yeah, I completely
Especially
agree.
for something as big as a real estate transaction.
No doubt. So then when you did get the radio show going, has the radio show become the main source, would you say, of volume over years? Is that talk a little bit about the impact that the show has had on your business?
Surprisingly, it's not, right? A lot of people would think that. Our number one source of business is still referrals on past clients. It's number one. We get some stuff from the radio, and it's interesting how we measure it, right? So I might have met someone 10 years ago. So I'll give you a prime example. Mike Fasano, right? Pasco County tax collector. I met him. I interviewed him on the show. We ultimately had the opportunity to be involved with real estate with him and sell his home and help him find another one. And that's a prime example. So when they come in the first time, they get counted as radio. When they come back the second time, they're now a repeat client. So they don't get tagged as radio again, although the initial source was radio. And it's opened some doors like that, right? For people. He's just one example of many people that I've got to meet and just really have the privilege of getting to know personally from introducing them on radio. In the future, as my team grows and I'm less and less in production, I see radio being a bigger part of creating opportunities for our team.
In your opinion, what has been the biggest benefits of having the radio show?
Meeting the people. It really got to open doors that it never would have been opened. So if I didn't have a radio show, there's a lot of people I never would have met. I mean, look, you're a prime example, right? There's a lot of people that probably never would have talked to you if you weren't doing a magazine or something, highlighting them.
Totally.
People love to talk about themselves, right? You interview agents all the time. They're the prime candidate, right, for high ego. But a lot of these people are paid spokespeople as well, right? So like we've had Tico and Duke on, and they have media people that do that. But the connections that we have made have been amazing. But the biggest reason why I still do it still today is the information that we provide the consumer and our past clients. So I'll give you a prime example. We just did a whole show on deed scams and signing up for property fraud alerts, because it's a real thing that's happening. And we wanted to make our database and our people aware of that. So that's why I still do it today.
So the radio show, I completely relate to what you just said, right? The network that can bring.
Yes.
And I'm losing my voice, which is great for a podcast, of course. So when you're bringing these people on and you're developing the network that you have, and then you have the ability to either follow up with them in certain ways for real estate needs, or do you find that just meeting them and kind of not really knowing where that relationship might go, if those needs come up, whenever they might be, you just want to be one of the consideration sets, right? And then people might come back to you for that reason.
That's exactly the goal. And to be honest with you, we all struggle for time, right? And so that's why I feel we're not leveraging it quite as much as we could. But the goal is to bring great content and build new relationships and meet people, right? And stay in relationship with them. So if they have a real estate need, we're one of the first people I think of.
Now, for many of those years in real estate, you were an individual producer. Is that correct?
I still am. I mean, so what I want you to understand about myself and our group is we're small. So we get classified up there with big groups that have a lot of agents, but some of the production that you've seen over the years, 45 million, literally that's myself, one other agent, and some support staff, maybe a showing agent. I mean, that's a lot of volume for an agent. So I'm in this stage in my career where I'm trying to replace myself slowly. So my oldest daughter, she's 23. She's in the business with us.
Nice.
She's learning like
What's her
I
name?
was at 23, Madeline.
Shout out to Madeline.
They call her Maddie. I'm so proud of her. She's grown so much. Like she's grown in ways that it's just been fun as a mom to watch that.
That's cool. Has she always had an interest in real estate, or did that just come?
My kids growing up, they all told me that they hated real estate. I worked too much, and none of them were ever going to be involved in real estate or the business.
And now they're following in your footsteps, huh?
The older one is.
Must be neat, though, that you get to almost work with them, right? See a different side of them because, one of the things that I appreciate about work is, depending, I guess, on the industry that you're in, a good business, in my opinion, is going to challenge you, right, in certain ways. And then when that happens, it shows you what you're made of, right? It brings out character, it brings out character traits, it brings out how you respond to resiliency and different challenges, all different things that come up. And I think I would have to imagine seeing that, and when that happens with your daughter, when their frustration, when a challenge happens, how they respond, I think that would be kind of neat.
Yeah, there's interesting dynamics working with family, right? Not
sure.
Everyone can do it. It's not always the easiest thing. And sometimes it's really hard to separate work from family at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
So if you work with family or considering work with family, that would be a piece of advice I have, would be when you're home. Like in my older daughter, she doesn't live with me. She's got her own home.
Right.
But when we're together, spend time with them. As a family, don't forget that,
right.
She's my daughter first and a colleague second.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
How many agents do you have on the team now?
So agent-wise, it's really just myself,
Okay.
Maddie. I have another part-time agent that still is a dual career agent, and I just hired a lead listing agent, which is the first time I've ever done that.
So you mentioned earlier that you're thinking now moving forward that you want to try to grow the team. Are you focused on recruiting? Is that kind of the next phase for you?
I wouldn't say that, no, because we get approached all the time by people that want to join our team, and honestly, I don't have the capacity right at this moment to interview all of them and onboard them the way that we need to.
Yep.
I've always been support staff heavy first, agent second, so there's more pieces in terms of leverage that I would want in place before we grow. And honestly, we may always stay a small team. We don't have to be like a major conglomerate that wants to go nationwide. I'm very much about relationship. So it's always going to be that over anything else first.
We didn't really I know you mentioned your book, but what was that experience like of just writing the book? Did someone approach you about that too? Or was that just your own idea and
I
just
did
it?
Yeah, I got approached by a person, which I can't mention, but I did. I was originally going to publish with them as a publisher, and the long and the short of it is, after I had an entertaining and publishing attorney review their contract, I was not going to sign it. So there was some stuff I didn't like after he reviewed it, and we talked about it. It wasn't going to be anything I signed. So at the end of the day, we couldn't agree on the contract. So not only did I pay to get my book ready and published, but I ended up self-publishing, so I had additional costs related to that. But it was still a fantastic journey. There's a lot of people that want to write a book. When you think about the process of what it's like to write a book, there's the thought, there's people that want to do it, actually taking the first step and going down that road, and then building out all the chapters and all the things that have to happen, then actually getting to the finish line and publishing it. It's a big undertaking. It's a huge accomplishment.
And when did you put yours out?
It launched a couple years ago. I still haven't even got it out on Audible. Like, that's the next goal. And then I have an idea for a couple of other books that I want to write.
I was about to ask you. So you do have some other ones coming, huh?
Yeah, they say books are like tattoos. I don't have any, but that's what I'm told. That books are like tattoos. Once you have one, it's an addiction, and you want another one and another one and another one.
I get that. Or in the same space, like relationship marketing kind of philosophies,
So-
selling through relationships, building off of that brand.
I'll tell you one. I'm not going to tell you the other one.
Okay.
I don't want someone to take my
Go ahead.
idea.
We want.
So the second book that I think I'm going to write, because it will probably be in this order, is on money. I'm going to write a book about money and teaching people how to build wealth, using money, teaching people all the fundamentals of money, and then teaching them how to build wealth through real estate.
That makes sense.
I think that's really my calling in life. And so, which is ultimately one of my long-term goals, which I mentioned about starting the nonprofit for down payment assistance. I think the traditional model now is broken, and I really just would like to clean that up and teach people a better way to win with money.
That's awesome. And that makes sense with your background as a lender and then, of course, the real estate side. So are you a heavy investor in whether it's rental, long-term? We just had a panel that we did this past yesterday, actually, on building wealth through real estate at Whiskey Cake. We do one every month, as you probably are aware. And we had 4 agents that or 4 panelists there sharing their perspectives on their strategies of how they do that. One was focused on short-term rentals. One was focused on fix and flips with long-term rentals. One was focused on commercial investment, multifamily, and other commercial property. And one was more of the money guy. We had Frank Cotto on there talking about money. Are there certain investment strategies that have worked for you?
So it's interesting you say that. And I think everyone's journey has to be their own. And so what I will tell you is my journey is very different than I thought it would be. So the first investment property I bought was our office building.
Okay.
And I did that because I wanted to build a studio in our office for Tampa Home Talk.
Yep.
And so essentially that's how that started. That was my first piece of investment real estate. From there, it's been a little bit of a slow roll. I know a lot of people kind of like to fast track it and know I want to buy they want to buy a door or an investment property a month or one a year or whatever. I would say slow and steady wins the race. So be careful, be precise. I've lived through a lot of different markets up and down. And I think probably 75% of the agents in this market right now have only ever seen a good market.
How many tenants do you have in your building?
It's just us. We occupy the whole space.
Gotcha.
So we have what they call a mega agent office, which means our production supports enough to be licensed as a branch through KWRI. So we're a licensed Keller Williams office.
Got it.
And, Tampa Home Talk has a room where we have a studio.
I love it. So when you think about, and then we'll move on to a different topic, but when you think about this building wealth topic that you're going to want to write about, is there a particular niche that you think that you're most passionate about that you'd want to focus on?
Yes, I think it's where you start, right? Because so many people just have the target in mind and then try to run. They don't slow down to look at all the steps. And the number one thing is get your house in order, right? It's a verse in the Bible, but you have to have your own budget and you have to know where your money's going before you spend it, before you can ever do something like invest in real estate. Because I'm so relational, I've had people, I can think of a guy right now that comes to mind. He was a listener on the show. He approached us about buying investment property, which we want to help him with. But the way he wanted to do it, to borrow against his primary home, to do it, and then looking at his other debt load, this is where the lender side of me just naturally kicks in. It was setting him up to fail, not succeed. So I'm going to walk away from that every time. And I literally advised him, I want to help you buy investment properties and buy real estate, but this is not the time for you. You should do A, B, C, and D, get some debt paid off, get your money right, and then we'll put together a plan and I'll help you buy investment properties. But I don't suggest you do it right now.
That's smart. Very smart. Is there a particular tool or budget plan that you recommend to people who maybe are not the best at figuring that side of it out, just the actual cash flow management?
So like with anything that you're trying to learn in life, you have to study it. You have to read about it. You have to talk to other people, right, that have succeeded in what you're trying to do. I always say, if you're looking to build wealth or get good at your money, study everything you can around money.
Yep.
And so I spent a long time doing that. And, one of the people I followed for a long time was Dave Ramsey. And I had learned about the baby steps. And so it was really, they teach zero-based budget and no debt. There's a lot of value in that. I see the flip side on both sides. But I think wherever you're at in life, you have to study it before you launch, right? Don't just jump in and get your feet wet without taking time to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, it's good advice.
Right?
And there's a lot of different programs out there that can help you. There's one that I know of. It's a book, YNAB.
Yep.
You Need a
Why
Budget.
You Need a Budget.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a book, and it has a whole platform really that they offer, which I think has got a lot of great information in it.
Yeah. So I studied everything I could with money, and that's how ultimately I think I figured out how to win with money. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the bigger goal there, is teaching people that fundamental part because it's really painful, right? If anybody that has accumulated a lot of wealth or done really well with money or fast tracked whatever, and then they lose it all.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I mean, we've all heard those stories,
right.
But I think that happens because people fail to realize slow and steady wins the race.
Yep.
With real estate, with investing, with building your net worth, it's a slow roll. I don't know any overnight millionaires, and there's a lot of studies that show people that inherit money without learning those base fundamentals, they're broke within 2 years.
Totally. Makes a lot of all the sense in the world, and it's really about that foundation, and it is a mentality, at the end of the day.
And teach your kids how to win with money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we joke around with Maddie at the office, and we say she's so tight she squeaks when she walks, but she learned that from us. At the time she was young, we were focusing on not having any debt and paying off our house and just making sure we had a hefty reserve. Mm-hmm. And so she's not a kid that's going to go spend 20 grand on a credit card. She's going to think about it. She's going to make sure she really needs it. And then there's times I have to we're in a gasparilla crew, right? And this is her first year in, and she couldn't get over the fact that there was a fee to do that, and you had to buy the beads. And I was like, yes, honey. And this is a nonprofit, and it's this is how you network with people. So, but I love that part of her, that she's frugal, and
awesome.
I see such a big
She got that from Mama Bear, huh?
Well, there's 4 kids, right? So the oldest is 29, Madeline's 23, Nick's 20, and Adelisa's 17. And so you can really see as a mom, and even other people can see this generational gap between the older 2 and the younger 2. It's pretty.
2 girls, 2 boys, yeah?
2 girls and 2 boys.
Very cool. So for people who don't know you that well yet on a personal side, what do you guys love to do as a family? What keeps the Madewell family humming along when you're not just crushing real estate?
We're boaters, even though I'm a super white girl with red hair. I like the water. We do.
You're in a good area for that.
We like the water. We like to boat. It's.
You live on one of the lakes up there? You live in Land O'Lakes, or what part of the area are you from?
I live in Land O'Lakes. Yeah. We're in Connerton now, which wasn't the plan, but it's the plan for now.
Yep.
And we don't live on the water, so we trailer our boat. But we're lucky enough to have family members that do. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we'll park our boat at their place for an extended period of time. But just being out on the water, enjoying it. My husband would like to fish a little bit more.
Right.
I'm cool. Just my dream day is taking a book and just chilling in the sunshine and closing my eyes, relaxing on the water. On
a boat somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm a book reader myself, and I do also love boats, so I can kind of vibe with you on that laid out day for sure.
Yeah. The whole family likes water. So to answer your question, they all grew up in and around the water. We would spend entire summers in Bradenton, fishing, going on the boat, camping. So
is it just the oldest that's into real estate now?
It's just the oldest that's in the business, yeah.
What about the other 3? What are their interests like?
So my older one, he's getting married. So the oldest one is finally getting married on his birthday. He'll be 30 next year.
Big day coming up.
Yes, and he is a cop, so he's in law enforcement in Orlando.
Nice.
And Madeline's in real estate. Nick actually has had his same job since we made him get one in high school. So he works at Hungry Harry's, kind of runs the show there on the cook line, trying to figure out life himself. And then the younger one, man, she pretty much runs the Dunkin' Donuts she's at. She runs the show.
Do you think any of them will want to follow in the real estate footsteps other than Maddie?
I think my son is interested, but he has concerns working with family.
That makes sense.
He's like, I don't know if I want to work for mom. She'll tell me what to do. But
he does realize there's other people in real estate who could work for if he wanted to, I guess.
And even when you work with family, you still have your own business. Even when you're on a team, you still have your own business and your own stuff you're doing.
For sure. A couple other rapid fire things for people to get to know you a little bit. So do you have a favorite book, maybe it's your own, or author maybe, or seminar that you've attended that you feel like has made a big impact on you personally or professionally?
It's not my own. That would be way too egotistical. And that's not me. I'm sure you know that by now. Although I think it's a good book and there's value in there, it's not my favorite. I would say my favorite book I ever read, which ties into the latter part of your question, is The Road Less Stupid, with Keith Cunningham.
Great book. Yeah, I've read it.
And so I had the honor and the privilege of doing the 4-day MBA with him last year. It was absolutely incredible. It was expensive. It was one of the best, just in general, business trainings I've ever been to. So he doesn't do it anymore himself. That was the last one. But I consider it money well spent.
He's a great teacher.
He is.
He makes very complicated subjects simple.
Simple.
Yeah, he does. And John Maxwell talks a lot about that too. Like a great communicator is one who can take a complex subject and make it simple versus how most people take a simple subject and make it complex, right?
I'd say the premise of his book is about thinking time. That's the biggest thing
about
about
the question
that
he
book.
keeps asking? Stop and think about it right now or something like that?
It's like the questions that you're not asking yourself that keep you from making big mistakes in business and life and with money. And essentially, I love questions. Like I'm the type, I love to write. So I could journal. I love really good questions where I can sit by myself and think and journal about it.
Yeah, and that book has a lot of them in it. So you can spend a lot of time just thinking through the questions that are in each one of those chapters. It was one of my favorite books too.
It's like a reference guide for business,
Totally.
really.
Yeah, it's a great recommendation. I actually heard that he was the rich dad for Robert Kiyosaki as well in the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. Many people don't know that.
That's true. Yeah, it is true. It's a sore subject for Keith. He does not like to talk about it.
Really? I didn't know that.
But that is true.
Yeah, very cool.
Well, you have to think somebody that you helped has now made all this money on your back, and it just, I get it.
Well, a lot of people assumed that was a fake story in a way, the whole Rich Dad, Poor Dad thing. But I don't even remember where I got that information. I know somebody who actually knows Robert Kiyosaki fairly well, and it might have been through him. But yeah.
Yeah, but that part is true. Keith Cunningham is the Rich Dad and Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have a favorite TV show or movie?
I actually get made fun of on the air because I don't watch a lot of TV or movies for that matter. Like I had Tampa Theater on this morning on air, and they're like, well, we were looking at their Nightmare on Franklin Street, and we were looking at all the movies, and I said, out of all those movies, I've only seen 2. It's probably the same for the Christmas stuff.
So nothing comes to mind, not even a family favorite.
Oh my goodness.
Holiday movie that you guys watch every year.
I'm trying to think. There's probably one, but
no worries.
It's not popping
Favorite
in my
food?
mind right now. I like most food, unfortunately.
There's nothing unfortunate about that. I'm a foodie myself.
We eat a lot of chicken. We like steak. I like
Keep
anything
the protein
that's
strong.
super flavorful.
That's the nice thing about Tampa Bay too. You get a lot of options. There's stuff everywhere.
I love Cuban food, probably because I'm from here.
That makes sense.
I love cafe con leche. And
is Madewell Irish?
It's my married name, so that's a good question for my husband. I don't know.
Gotcha. Okay. What's your maiden name?
Jasper.
Which is
Jasper.
Scottish, Irish?
I don't know.
You must have some Scottish or Irish going on with the red hair.
Yeah,
yes,
I do.
It makes sense.
I have actually my DNA tree thing, and I have a lot of European, Scottish.
Gotcha.
Norwegian.
I wanted to give you a chance. You mentioned a couple times the nonprofit that you brought up, and I know that's passionate. I think we've even featured that, if I remember correctly, in Tampa Bay Real Producers. Am I wrong? I thought we did a Making a Difference on you. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
You did not, because I haven't started it yet. It's an idea. It hasn't come to fruition.
So if you want to just elaborate on it briefly, like why is it something you're passionate about, and what do you envision it to be?
Well, when you think about home ownership, it's the American dream, right? For so many people to own a home really is the American dream. It was for me. And what I didn't get at home was those core foundational principles with money.
Yeah.
And so that's the bigger premise behind it. So there's a lot of nonprofits out there. I think the traditional, and they do a lot of really great things. I don't want to take anything away from them, but I think the traditional down payment assistance model is broken in terms of it's more of a hand out versus a hand up. And so a prime example of that would be Habitat for Humanity. You know how there's a wait list, there's a very small number. People have to work on their own home and other people's home before they ever get the privilege or the honor to have a Habitat house. And so I think that it's that sort of thing. That's what's missing in most of the down payment assistance programs out there. And so I think people should have to work and earn a little bit more of it. I worked 3 jobs to buy my first house, and no one gave me anything. And so I feel like you should, if you're trying to do something as big as buying a house, there's no handouts. You need a hand up. So
it's a different mentality of achievement too when you've been able to do that. I think
Correct.
that ownership factor is very different.
You know, and Dave Ramsey and his daughter, Rachel Cruz, have had the privilege of interviewing her on Tampa Home Talk, but they talk about that same thing, how if you don't learn the key rules around money, nothing ever changes.
Yeah.
And so the same thing is true there. If you didn't work and earn it, you're going to fight really hard to keep it, right?
Totally.
Through regardless of the economy, you're going to make sure that's the first thing you pay and you take care of it, and you're going to treat that home with pride.
Absolutely.
And so I want people to win with money so that long term it's successful for them.
It's very cool. So we're going to wrap up here so we can get you out on time. But one of my favorite questions is hopefully going to have you think a little bit about your legacy and what you want to be remembered for. It's one of my questions I typically ask, where like when you're sitting on that rocking chair and thinking back to what is most important to you, right? What do you think, Katrina, would be some things that you'd want to be remembered for most, personally or professionally? What matters most to you in terms of legacy you'd want to leave?
So legacy is a big word, right? And I feel like it gets thrown around a lot in today's day and age, but it's a big deal. Your legacy is the impact that you've left on your family, your community, the people that know you. And so my family's a little bit different. We don't do the traditional funerals. We really haven't. That's a very controversial
Celebration of life?
We do. And it was before it was like a thing that was kind of thrown out there, but there's no like viewing over a dead body, anything like that. We don't do that. So we're pretty much cremated. And then whether it's a month or 2 or 6, when the family feels like they're healed enough to do a celebration, then we do it. And so that celebration of life truly is a celebration of life. So it is celebrating that person's memories. You know, we are laughing and telling stories and talking about all the things that we did, stupid, funny, amazing, and really just celebrating that person's life. And so when you ask that question, that's what comes to mind for me. And so when I think about that, when I think about, okay, when that's my time and people are having my celebration of life, what do I want to be remembered for? And I would say it's the impact I've made on people's lives. So again, teaching people how to win with money, teaching people gratitude, teaching people contentment. Those are 3 very big things that I think give a lot of people happiness and fulfillment in life. So whether that's things as simple as, you know, I remember a guy probably 25 years ago, I did a consultation for him. He was a guy of Mexican descent. Not to take anything away from him, I'm trying to add to the story, but he was probably one of the hardest working people I'd ever met. He worked 7 days a week, nonstop. He was a business owner, and he literally never had any time for his family. And I said, you know, we take every Sunday off. We take that day off as the Sabbath. It's really important to spend time with family. I work a lot, but I've got to have a dedicated time down for my kids and with my family. And he said, I've never done that. And I said, well, you should. I said, all you have to do is tell your clients you're taking a day off, and they'll respect that. And in fact, you'll probably make more money than you did before you took the day off. And you
Even
know,
God rested on the 7th day.
That's what I say. God made the world, and he took a break, so can we. So basically, the next time I saw him, you know, we were in the process of, I think he was buying a home or selling a home. I don't remember. I think buying. But anyway, he said he had taken his daughter to Disney World. It's the first time that he had ever done that. And he said the joy that their family had together, just in the, I mean, A, it's Disney, but B, just the time together.
Yeah.
And he told me that he was consistently taking 1 day off a week for his family. So when you ask me the question about legacy and impact, and you say, Katrina, what type of impact do you want to leave on the world? That's it. It's
cool.
those simple conversations where you're super present in the moment to change someone's life. For me, that's legacy.
That's awesome. That's a great answer. I've asked that question to a lot of people. That's one of the best answers that I've heard, Katrina. So I appreciate you sharing and being so thoughtful.
It's not just about the money, right?
Of course not.
It's so many other things. It's about the conversations and